Last thing I want to talk about patriotism, and I'm glad Cree mentioned John McCain, and I just want to say a word about John. He was a very close friend. I didn't know John when I came to the Senate. I knew John McCain, sort of the legend, John McCain, the presidential candidate, John McCain, the POW, but I didn't know him as a person. But I asked to be on the Armed Services Committee, and I got on it, and John was the lead Republican, and then for the last 4 years he's been my chair. John and I shared this. At the time I came into the Senate, only 3 of us in the Senate of 100 had children in the military. John's son was an Arizona Guardsman deployed overseas. My boy Nat is an infantry commander in the Marine Corps, and Dick Blumenthal's had a son as a Navy SEAL. So that formed a bond. McCain was an irascible, very temperamental, very argumentative, very imperfect person, as he would say. He would say all those things about himself. I got in a fight with McCain 2 months into the committee. They hadn't warned me, you're going to get in a big fight with McCain. Everybody does. Nobody had warned me about that. I'm at a hearing, Cree, we're having a debate about the carrier program down at the shipyard in Virginia. And McCain started to trash it for a variety of reasons, and I'm not going to let that go by unnoticed. So when it got to be my time, I started to rehabilitate all the witnesses and have them explain their answers to show that McCain was wrong and I was right. And then he started to interrupt me, and I was like, hey, Mr. Chairman, this is my time now. You had your time. This is my time now. So we fought, and then when I was done fighting with him, I thought, oh, what have I done now? I've been in the Senate 2 months, and this is like this American hero, and he's going to be my chair, and I probably really screwed things up for myself. I went over to McCain, not to apologize, but to sort of see if I needed to do much bridge building. And he just like put his arm around my shoulder. Welcome to the Senate, son. Welcome to the Senate. It was just like, McCain just loved to fight. And we fought plenty, and we traveled around the world to see our troops everywhere. And we wrote articles together. We'd be on opposite sides, but if he was with you, he was with you. McCain was a Republican. We disagreed on a lot. But if you could convince McCain on the merits, it didn't matter what any poll said. And it didn't matter what Mitch McConnell said. If you could convince him on the merits, he was with you. President Trump's first budget slashed diplomacy, slashed the State Department, slashed USAID. I asked McCain, let's write an article together and say this is BS. And he said, great, we'll do it. You write it, Tim. So I did. And we got it published. I can't remember where we got it published. It might have been CNN op-ed. I'm sitting at an Armed Services meeting, and it actually goes online in the middle of a meeting. You know, President Trump shouldn't cut foreign aid by John McCain and Tim Kaine. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I took it up on my iPad, and I went over to McCain and said, look at this. Is this what happens when I write an article and get you to sign on? He said, Tim, you lost the race for vice president, but I lost the race for president. But if we're talking about patriotism, you know, I just got to say, McCain showed it not only in his service to the military, but he showed it in many occasions when he would stand up against the will of his party. And the most important one was his vote to save health insurance for millions of people. I will never forget that moment in my life, single most electrifying moment in my political career. Jennifer's heard me tell this story, but the Republicans, I mean, let's compare. We said the Pledge of Allegiance at the start, and the Pledge of Allegiance ends with the words, for all. When it was written in 1890 by Minister Francis Bellamy, he could have just stopped with liberty and justice, period. And that would have been a fine pledge, but he added the 2 words at the end, it's got to be for all. So if it doesn't work for all, it's not working. If it doesn't work for all, we have more work to do. And we say this, and our kids do. Bellamy not only wrote the pledge, he determined it should be said by every school child, in every classroom, in every school, in every city and county, every day in the United States. And it should be said to a flag on the wall. So why do we have flags on the walls of classrooms? This is what Francis Bellamy worked on for 15 years. But when we say those words for all at the end of the Pledge of Allegiance, there's a real question on the ballot in November, is America still that nation or not? And I say that because we have a president, let's be blunt, who's not a for all guy. He's not living the for all value when he picks a fight with somebody based on what country they come from or what religion they practice. It's always about fighting with somebody. It might be a Republican, it might be a Democrat. It might be being petty and not mentioning John McCain's name when he signs the John McCain National Defense Authorizing Act. He might fight with Attorney General Jeff Sessions and then turn around and fight with Omarosa. He might pick a battle with an ally like Justin Trudeau or Angela Merkel. It's always about fighting and dividing. That's what we have from the top. We don't have a for all, we have a for me. What's in it for me? Or what's in it for a few? And somebody's got to stand up in this country in 2018. We need a party that will stand up in this country in 2018 and say those for all words at the end of the pledge are not a lie, but that we still believe them, and that's still who we are as a people. And Cree, I've used Cree as my Exhibit A when I tell this, and I'm concluding now, but I just want to prove to you you're on the right team. The Democrats are the for all team. We are the for all team. You know that or you wouldn't be here, but you might get asked by somebody in the next 64 days why you're a Democrat, why do you support Jennifer, why do you support Tim, what is it about being a Democrat you like? You might get asked what's the difference between the two parties in 2018, so I'll tell you what the difference is. The Dems are the for all team and the Republicans aren't these days. Cree goes back to Richmond in January after this historic win. You were energized, produced big wins, but for Dems, that's not enough. For Dems, it's what do we do with it? What do we do after a win? So Cree goes back, and they pick up this multi-year effort to expand Medicaid so that 400,000 people can get health insurance, many for the first time in their life. And in May, they get there, and they have that vote. And the General Assembly started in 1619, folks. It's been going for 399 years. There was never a vote in the history of the General Assembly that did as much good for as many as that vote that Cree and the Democrats, with some Republicans who joined them, passed to give people health insurance. Now here's something that Cree is a smart enough politician to have instantaneously realized. When you're voting and you're expanding health insurance by 400,000 people, you know who they are. They give you a map. They show you where people are who are eligible for Medicaid expansion. And if you look at that map, the thought will occur to you in a microsecond, wow, a lot of these are not my voters. Probably half of that 400,000, they're not Democrats. Some have never voted for Democrats. Some will never vote for Democrats. Many will never say thank you. They will never even say thank you to the Democrats who made sure there was a Medicaid expansion. Democrats like Cree, Democrats like a President Obama who got the Affordable Care Act passed so there could be a Medicaid expansion. But how did the Democrats feel about casting a vote to help people who weren't our supporters? Did that trouble us in the least? No, we felt fantastic about it. Why would Democrats feel so good about doing something so important for people who were not our supporters? Because we're the for all people. If you are a Virginian, you are my neighbor. If you are my neighbor, I'm commanded to love you. And I don't get a pass based on whether you vote for me or not. Come to a fundraiser, come to the Buena Vista breakfast, make a donation. No, I am commanded to love my neighbor. And so, of course, Cree and the Democrats were happy to do something to lighten other people's burden and make sure that they had health care for the first time in their life. But on the other side, look what we have. President Trump came into office in January of 2017. First goal, I want to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. He wanted to do it on day one, and then as he famously said, wow, who knew health care was so complicated? But that was their goal. And that's all they did in 2017 from Inauguration Day till late July 2017. That's all they did. I was saying with Jennifer last night, Congress is supposed to do a budget every year in March or April. In 2017, they didn't do a budget. We can't be bothered with that. We got to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. They pushed the budget to October because that wasn't their priority. Their priority was getting rid of health care for people. And they got it through the House, and they got it through the Senate. And now we're on the floor of the Senate, and the bill on the Senate will take health insurance away from 20 million people. Cree's priority was expanding health care, including for those who wouldn't support Democrats. The President and the GOP priority was taking health care away. And you could see who they were, too. Who was going to lose health care? You could look at the map. You could see where they lived. At least half of those folks were not Democrats. They were Republicans. They were willing to do heavy lifting for months to take health insurance away from millions of their own voters. Of their own voters. And so here we are on the floor, and we have two strong Republican senators who were with us, Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. They were very Republican. But they knew that it would hurt people in their state, and they were with us. And so it's 50-50. And they have the vice president in the chair to break a tie. Because everybody knows McCain is going to vote with them. That's what everybody's saying. Oh, he voted on procedural moves to advance the bill. He voted against the Affordable Care Act when it was up. And so they bring the vice president in. They don't bring the vice president in to break a tie unless there's a tie to be broken. So it was going to be 50-50, and the vice president was going to break a tie and celebrate taking health insurance away from 20 million people. But I told the Democrats earlier in the day, you may think McCain's voting against you, and I don't have any facts to say otherwise, but I'll tell you this, I can't see this guy going to a hospital, getting diagnosed with glioblastoma, being around a lot of people in the hospital who are really suffering, who are deeply worried about not just their health, but their life. I can't see this guy being with people who are suffering like he is and coming back to the Senate and voting to take health insurance away from millions. I just can't. And that night at 2:30 in the morning, the gladiator scene, you know, where he comes in and he goes thumbs down. And we owe John McCain a huge, huge debt of thanks for that. I'll tell you though, the vice president said Thursday if the Republicans do well in November, they're going right back to it. Without John McCain in their way, they're going right back to trying to take away the Affordable Care Act. So if you want to know the difference between the two teams, is there a better definition of what it is to be a for-all team that we're willing to do heavy lifting even for people who won't support us? And the other team that's willing to do heavy lifting to hurt people, even their own supporters. That's the difference in 2018. The race, in my race, it's not Tim versus Corey, and Jennifer's isn't Jennifer versus Ben. The race this November is, are we going to send a message loud and clear that we're for all people, or is there going to be a different message? And I think we, and the world, needs to see that in Virginia and in this country, we still embrace that patriotic for all value that we have our kids say every day. Why have them say it otherwise if we don't want to believe it and live it? So thank you so much for coming out today. We're going to have a fantastic time out at the parade. Come out and see us. Come out and walk with us. Let's go win on November 6th, 64 days.